Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session here at Nelson Mandela University called Influencing with Open Education. My name is Gino Fransman. I'm an advocate and champion for open, really, from the LT CoLab here at Mandela Uni. I'm also the project leader of the Open Ed Influencers project here at Nelson Mandela Uni, and we'll tell you a bit more about that a bit later on. The Open Education Influencers were also part of the UNESCO Open Education for a Better World program this year and last year. And that's where we had the exceptional pleasure to be working with our guest speaker for today. Before we go any further, what I'm going to do is share some of the session guidelines with you in the chat function on the side. Okay, I have made sure that anyone can join now by disabling the waiting room. Have I? Yes. So what I'll do is at the bottom of the chat window, please feel free to have a look at the rules. I will also just read through them quickly and then give a short introduction about the session's aims of the series, and then hand over to our guest speaker for today. So our room guidelines for the day, please note that the session is recorded. It's recording right now. Please have your mics on mute, please. The cameras should be off, except when asking questions. And this is to both save data, as well as to prevent distractions while our guest speaker is busy presenting. If you do turn your mic on when you ask a question, please reduce the background noise, make sure that there's nothing distracting from your message, and use the chat feature to enter questions as the session progresses. We will engage with that at the end of the actual presentation. The presentation is about 30 to 35 minutes in length, so we should be out of here within an hour. As our presenter said, Zoom sessions could be fatiguing, and that's the last thing we aim to do. We want to inspire, invigorate, and empower you with some knowledge about open education. Follow-up questions can be sent to myself, to Kelly Liberty, or Mlungisi Mhlongo. The email addresses are there at the bottom of the chat window. Just note that recordings of all of these sessions are made available on the Mandela Uni webinars and events page. You can find them under the LT CoLab section. LT CoLab, the Learning Teaching Collaboration. The website link is there, and also just be aware that the slides used in these presentations will also be made available to all attendees afterwards. So welcome, and without much ado, let me just introduce the series. So Influencing with Open Education is an online webinar series presented by the Open Education Influencers in the LT CoLab here at Nelson Mandela University. This informative and often practical series of weekly Zoom sessions provide attendees opportunities to gain more in-depth understanding of open education resources or OER, and open practices. Hear directly from open practitioners in South Africa and today from abroad. Seeking to support improved access to education and the resources required for learning and teaching, and aiming to enhance the effectiveness of learning and teaching interventions. This series of webinars also directly engage with the hows of finding open textbook and OER for specific disciplines, while exploring open licenses and their reduced barriers to sharing and using content. The topic for today is increasing education access with open education resources and leveraging local and global libraries with open education initiative programs. Before I go any further, I'd like to share my screen and introduce you to our collaborator and presenter today, Sarah Hutton. I will do so by playing a short video which chronicles some of what we've been working on recently. I might need to share computer sound. It's always useful. We'll go back. Hello, my name is Gino Fransman. I'm the project leader of the Open Education Influencers project here at Nelson Mandela University. Our collaborators are the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the United States, Production House, which is a local production company here in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, the Open University of the UK, and us at Nelson Mandela University.
Hello, I'm Sarah Hutton. I'm the head of student success and engagement at the W.E.B. Du Bois Library, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I'm one of the project partners for becoming an open education influencer.
I'm Teresa Dooley, and I work with the student staff at the W.E.B. Du Bois Library in the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm also a graduate student studying to be a librarian. This project's so important because the learners who go through the course are going to be the future researchers and faculty who really revolutionize the existing educational model.
Hello, I'm Carol Will. I'm an academic librarian and I'm also the Learning Commons coordinator at a very large research library on the campus of the University of Massachusetts.
Hi, my name is Ntamisha Maseka, and I am a doctoral student in public law at the Nelson Mandela University. As a budding researcher, I've come to realize that a core component of producing a quality outcome is access to high-quality resources. Therefore, being an open education influencer is important because I'm part of a movement, a process, a philosophy of eliminating barriers to access.
Open educational resources, while offering the opportunity to have education be more accessible and affordable to students, which is incredibly important, also provides the opportunity for students to see their own voices reflected in their curriculum.
What does the BOEI project mean to me? It means opportunity for those who wouldn't normally have a chance to publish, to actually create their own materials, distribute them, and also have access to the materials of others.
Working on the Becoming an Open Education Influencers program with colleagues from Nelson Mandela University has been such an extraordinary experience. As we navigate these challenging times, we've been able to get to know each other better, support one another, and lift each other up. And it's given us a lot of hope.
Just before I hand over to Sarah, just a quick introduction. So Sarah Hutton has an MLIS from the University of Rhode Island in the US and is a doctoral candidate in the College of Education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, focusing on educational policy and leadership in higher education. She also serves as Head of Student Success and Engagement at the University Libraries. Sarah's been teaching for several years on the topics of research methods, making and maker spaces, and open publishing and scholarship. She's a member of the Creative Commons and the Global Network, she's a member of the Creative Commons Global Network, the GoGN, which is the Global Open Education Resources Graduate Network, and a collaborator with OE Global. Sarah is engaged in many conversations and projects worldwide related to the prominence of student voice in open scholarship, experiential learning modalities, and student wellness. It sounds so amazing and so exciting to have you here. So Sarah, I'll hand over to you. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Gino. It does sound very exciting. I hope I live up to the description. So let me go ahead and share my screen to get that started. I'm working with a dual monitor here. So sharing desktop 2. Can you see my desktop okay? Is that a yes?
Yes, we can. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. So now I just need to get this out of the way. Sorry, my toolbar is in the way now, so I can't do present. One moment, please. Okay. Try this again. Doot. Okay. Great. Okay, so thank you so much. Before I get started in talking about what you've invited me here for today, I wanted to take the opportunity for thanking you for this invite as a part of the Open Education Colloquium. It's through these shared continuing conversations across our institutions that really help us to generate new ideas and create new collaborations that can ultimately achieve the shared goal, which is providing a more positive experience for our students. And especially now, I want to thank my colleagues at Mandela University, Mandela Uni, for continuing these essential conversations, especially as we navigate these incredibly challenging times in our communities and education systems. It's impacted all of us over the course of these last several months and continues to do so. So telling you a little bit more about who I am, just positionally speaking, to provide the lens that I'm looking through during this conversation. As a librarian, a first-gen college student, and first in family PhD student, I'm incredibly passionate about promoting access to information, education, and providing opportunities for student agency, particularly to those who may have not had that traditional educational scaffolding, speaking from personal experience, as they approach the higher education setting. As an advocate of open knowledge sharing, I want to honor the contributions of colleagues that you will see throughout this presentation, content that has been shared CC by NC and through ongoing collaborations. So an overview of what I will be talking about today. When considering a strategy for the integration of open education resources at my university, I frequently find myself using the metaphor of a sandwich. Within this layered approach, you have to tailor your strategies to each constituency, the faculty, the undergraduate and graduate students, and the administration, as they all play a role in a successful program. Excuse me. Today, I'll be focusing predominantly on the approach that we have taken with our faculty, using the Open Education Initiative program as an anchor for our conversations with the other parts of this sandwich. Little more information about UMass Amherst to provide additional context before talking about the OEI. We have over 31,000 students offer baccalaureate and graduate programs, as well as awarding doctoral degrees. And we are categorized by Carnegie as an R1 institution, which means we have a very high level of research activity, which is important to note, I feel, in this case, because that focus on research can sometimes overtake the focus on teaching. The librarians at UMass Amherst serve myriad roles, including those that may already be assumed, such as content selection, research support, though I wanted to note that our librarians also have faculty status, which is incredibly helpful as many of us serve on faculty senate councils and curriculum committees across the institution, which can help us with making inroads with faculty when it comes to the conversation about open education. When talking about publishing with faculty, it can be an incredibly hard sell. Much of faculty publishing is tied into the tenure promotion process, and publishers have a lockdown on a for-profit system that rewards publications in what have become brand name titles that end up acting as gatekeepers in certain disciplines, particularly the sciences come to mind, the natural sciences. We know that OER has become a major disruptor to this because many commercial textbook companies like Cengage, Pearson, and others have all rolled out OER or FOER projects in the last year or so, Faux ER, false educational resources, are promises being made by major publishers to open up educational content while still maintaining those exorbitant costs, those very high costs to access their resources. It is this disruption being made by high-profile publishers as well as academic libraries, squeezing these publishers on the rapid inflation rates and predatory practices for the publication of research that has generated major shift in faculty awareness of OER in recent years. As you can see in this study from Freeing the Textbook by Seaman and Seaman, faculty awareness has grown significantly. Awareness, that is, of OER has grown significantly since 2016, but there are still some major gaps. There's a large percentage of non-awareness still in 2018, over 50%. Highlighting textbooks as a significant, excuse me, rather than focusing on the very complex nature of scholarly publishing for their research, which I mentioned, we approach the conversation on OER with faculty from the education access perspective, putting students at the center. This has led to textbooks becoming the most concrete, approachable form of OER to start the discussion. Again, drawing from the ever-inflating pricing in the scholarly publishing industry, we show faculty how dramatically textbook costs in the US have increased over the last several decades. As you can see here in the bursting college textbook bubble and 945% increase over the past few decades in the cost of educational college textbooks. It is outrageous. Highlighting textbooks as a significant percentage of an undergraduate student's budget, we also show in this study conducted by the Association of American Publishers, at a public four-year institution like our own, books and supply costs average out to almost $11,000 USD annually. Again, and completely outrageous for our undergraduate students. There are national studies like this one from the Florida Virtual Campus that highlight the fact that students are less likely to purchase textbooks due to cost, and even worse, are less likely to take classes due to textbook cost. In conducting studies at our own institution, we have discovered that undergraduate students can be incredibly creative when it comes to acquiring the textbooks they need for their courses when the costs are too high. From borrowing money, cost sharing a book, or renting the book, they've gotten their hands on the materials. Though in many cases, as you can see here, they indicated that they would withdraw from, drop, or not register for a course due to a high textbook cost. So that is withdrawing from their educational experience due to textbook cost. Digging a little deeper in our research, we confirmed what we had already known about student approaches to obtaining these materials for courses when affording the textbook wasn't an option. We'd already been seeing increased borrowing behaviors through our own library reserves and interlibrary loan. And a very large percentage of students, you can see here, very large percentage of students who were searching for comparable course content out on the web, on Google, for example. And this could be with or without guidance from their instructors or librarians, just students desperate to get their hands on content because the textbooks were simply not affordable. So looking at some of the data that I just shared from US institutions of higher education and studies we'd conducted on our own, the most troubling findings is that the lack of access to textbooks was about more than just the content. As many colleagues like Robin DeRosa, who I have quoted here, have mentioned, textbook affordability, content affordability, and access are deeply tied to student success. And so it's through advocating, working with our faculty, that we were hopeful that we could start breaking down these barriers to access by first introducing the topic of affordability. Our Open Education Initiative is a program that was started in 2011 with money supplied by our provost and the libraries Funding grants of between $1,000 and $2,500 USD to each award recipient. In subsequent years of the program, funds came from the Friends of the Library Group, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and the Instructional Innovation Group. This grant program has now been offered in 8 cycles. Grants are given in one of 3 categories, with priority given to the projects that utilize or create the most openly licensed materials. Proposals that fall within the first category, open educational resources, must replace or propose to replace an existing commercial textbook with a no or low cost, and we've identified low cost as under $50 USD, alternative. Priority is given to proposals that utilize or create new openly licensed materials, that is licensed using Creative Commons licensing or GNU Public General Public License, public domain, etc., and that impact the largest amount of students. Proposals that fall within the second category, free or low-cost educational resources, replace commercial textbooks or learning materials with free licensed library materials. For example, articles found in LexisNexis, streaming video from Canopy, ebooks, etc., or free web content such as blog posts, news articles, think pieces, YouTube videos, and podcasts. Those will also be, this second category is also considered, but given a little less priority as the library has an existing infrastructure to support the use of these materials. And that pre-existing infrastructure comes in the form of reserves, interlibrary loan, and of course our subject specialists, our librarians. So the intent of the Open Education Initiative program is to incentivize faculty to develop alternatives to these outrageously priced textbooks that I've mentioned by providing support to faculty for content selection, adoption, and/or creation. Instructor proposals for the OEI awards are reviewed by representatives of the Center for Teaching and Learning, that's the CTL, Academic Innovation, that's a group in our Information Technology division, and the UMass Libraries, as well as a faculty member. So this is a team, a review team that gathers all the submitted proposals and reviews them. And they are evaluated, all the proposals are evaluated using the following rubrics: organization and planning, and also feasibility, qualitative and quantitative measures for successful implementation and impact, transformative impact on student savings, clarity and alignment with learning goals and outcomes, and pedagogical innovation. Priority funding for the proposals falls into 3 major categories. The libraries aim to have as many OER or no or low cost resources implemented in our general education courses, which will impact the greatest number of students, giving us that first priority category, general education classes. The second priority category are department-wide implementations, and this includes projects that are intended for implementing an OEI team's previously completed project to a department-wide, on a department-wide, all sections scale. So they may have previously been awarded a grant to implement OER in their own course, and now they're taking it to the department level and distributing it to their colleagues. Projects in the third priority category, upper level courses, are intended to address the gap in available OER and no or low cost resources in upper level undergraduate and graduate courses. These projects must result in the implementation of no or low cost resources and possibly the creation of OER in upper level, 300 level, and upper undergraduate and graduate courses. So in all of these priority categories, shifting that pedagogical model to incorporate OER into the curriculum can be a very heavy lift. It is through our collaborative partnerships on campus between the libraries, information technologies, that Academic Innovation Group, and the Center for Teaching and Learning that we're able to make that lift a bit lighter for that pedagogical shift. From the libraries, we have provided for instructors workshops on OER, copyright and Creative Commons licensing, research consultations to find resources and locate new content and create new content. And our circulation electronics reserve staff help to find materials licensed through the libraries to supplement courses. Our partners in information technology have provided classroom technologies and hosting solutions, opportunities for instructional technologies and experimentation, for example, web page hosting, server space for hosting content, and access and education on the use of educational software. And our partners in the Center for Teaching and Learning suggest OER to faculty during teaching consultations, which happen year-round, when a desire to increase interactive learning is indicated. And then they support the faculty in creating new curriculum materials and scaffolding for their courses for the integration of OER. 3 types of projects can be funded and supported through the collaborative efforts and support of our Open Education Initiative. Faculty can propose to first adopt, that is, redesign a course to incorporate an existing open textbook or open course content. Examples, you could adopt an OpenStax textbook with no modifications, find and incorporate Khan Academy or TED Talk videos, and more. The second category, adapt. You can combine or remix new or existing openly licensed content to bridge gaps in available resources. Examples, you could compile an early American literature book using public domain works, take several chapters from an OpenStax textbook and rewrite them or combine them with lecture notes developed for your class, create or implement interactive course authoring tools, adaptive learning, quizzes, etc., or low-cost homework platforms to accomplish affordable learning materials. The third category, create. You can create a new open educational resource where there are currently no sufficient OER available to meet your learning objectives. And some examples would be authoring a new openly licensed textbook, collaborating with your undergraduate or graduate students to create that textbook. And of course, there are these 3 major categories, but we are always open to accepting projects that fall within the other category, which is something that we haven't thought of before, encouraging our faculty to be creative and think of something entirely different and new. So throughout the running of the Open Education Initiative, we've partnered with external organizations such as the Open Textbook Library and Rebus community to locate new open content and promote OER to our campus. We have also partnered with Pressbooks, and we now use Pressbooks as one of our hosting solutions, Pressbooks EDU, along with our institutional repository, ScholarWorks, which hosts a lot of our openly published content. Our library scholarly communication group has led the way in creating multiple resources for instructors, students, and OER advocates as a part of supporting the OEI program over the years, and to continue to broaden the understanding of open licensing and options for replacing commercial content, as well as authoring your own content. We provide consolidated lists of open content resources and repositories such as OER Commons, the Open Pedagogy Notebook, and the George Mason OER MetaFinder. This centralized area of OER support content also includes information on applying for the Open Education Initiative, of course, providing examples of completed projects as inspiration for instructors considering to make the move to open. Here's an example of one of those completed projects from a 2019 excuse me, OEI Award recipient, Tori Trust, from the College of Education. This was created for her Teaching and Learning with Technology course. This open Innovating Teaching and Learning with Technology open textbooks hosted on EdTextbooks was created in collaboration with graduate students from her course and used to teach subsequent cohorts of that same class, and has also been used by other institutions teaching the same subject or on similar topics. This example is from 2018 OEI Award recipient Angela Roel, who collaborated with students to create a hybrid textbook, workbook that can act as an instructional guide for record keeping and apiary planning and management for beginning beekeepers. Being situated where we are, UMass Amherst is in the western side of the state in a very rural, highly agricultural area. Was originally founded as UMass Aggie. And so, focus on agricultural and sustainable agricultural development is very high. Research in this area is very high at our institution. And so this book especially has been adopted widely by the beekeeping community in the state and beyond. So aside from marveling at the inspirational content being created by instructors and in collaboration with their students, we have been keeping track of the impact that the OEI program has had on cost savings for students, perception of the quality of that content, and willingness to continue using open education resources. Since 2011, you can see that we have recorded significant cost savings and have reached thousands of students with this initiative. The majority of instructors adopting OER plan on continuing to use this content for subsequent versions of their courses. As you can see, that's 70% of our respondents. This is a breakdown of the number of students impacted by the OEI program. And it is no coincidence that we see some of the highest numbers in the natural sciences. As I mentioned before, some of the highest prices on textbooks are coming up in the natural sciences. In conversations with student and faculty, as well as our experience with purchasing and licensing content for areas like the natural sciences, we know the commercial scientific publications have some of the highest price tags. Additionally, some of our largest courses on campus, 300 to 500 plus students, are in the sciences. Another important data point, excuse me, going back to the heavy lift of switching to OER, made lighter by collaborative support, here's a breakdown of support staff involvement with the OER award recipients. As you can see, the libraries are providing the majority of the support as we focus on content selection, open licensing education, and coordinating the program overall. Looking at student perspective on the quality of the open content implemented during this program, we simply pose the question of whether students found it to be comparable, better or worse than commercial textbooks. As you can see, most students found it to be about the same, which that's good enough news for us, but also there's a very large percentage of students that found it to be better than their traditional commercial textbooks. And it was no surprise to us that this was the case, given that much of the open content that was created as a part of the OEI program was more thoughtfully designed to be more interactive than commercial textbooks, and was therefore more engaging and pertinent to the students enrolled in those courses. In content usefulness, most of the students surveyed also found content replacing commercial textbooks to be more useful in their learning process. This again speaks to the heightened engagement levels designed into the open content. The Open Education Initiative program has been incredibly successful in engaging our faculty in the exploration, adoption, and development of hybrid and open content. Access to education for undergraduate students has led a compelling conversation on why OER for our instructors, and our undergraduate students feel similarly compelled to advocate for their own education experience. Our Student Government Association, with 60 class senators, serves as a powerful student voice on campus. Members of the SGA participate in faculty senate committees such as the Undergraduate Education Council, Commonwealth Honors Council, and University Writing Committee. The libraries have partnered with student representatives from the SGA on multiple occasions, working on initiatives to provide access to textbooks and technology, The libraries are well positioned for these conversations as we have the organizational structure in place to circulate research materials, laptops, and provide access to essential software in support of academic work and student success. Our SGA student members are also engaged in the work of the Massachusetts student chapter of MassPIRG. MassPIRG is the local chapter of US PIRG, so US, United States. The PIRG, P-I-R-G, stands for Public Interest Research Group. It is a citizen-funded national organization operating in over 47 of our states that advocates on behalf of public interest, acting on behalf of the common good. On the local level, one of the main campaigns of the MassPIRG student chapter is to make textbooks more affordable. So far, we have been working with students in this local chapter who have crossover with our SGA student members to fly around local campuses, educating student peers on OER. And to highlight the group of students embedded within our own organization, we typically have 30 to 40 undergraduate students in the library's Student Success and Engagement Department alone, who provide most all public-facing services and participate in a peer leadership program overseen by our incredible staff in the Library Learning Commons. In the libraries overall, there are hundreds of students working to digitize materials, connect the campus and Commonwealth to content, and develop their own digital collections, like this featured student from our UMass Create Fellowship, who worked on a public domain project. This group is ripe to participate in the OER strategy conversation, given their position in classroom conversations with faculty, peers, and interactions with the public on a daily basis. Our focus on affordable education access and partnerships with multiple student organizations provided an opportunity ripe for taking student self-advocacy to the next level. When I first learned of the Becoming an Open Educational Influencer program at the Open Ed Global OE Global Conference at the end of last year, I felt that there may be potential to explore further. I know that Gino has provided an overview of the Open Ed influencers and our continuing partnership. We have been thrilled to collaborate on content that will help enrich student understanding of how they can take the lead in these open education advocacy conversations. In considering how to implement program components from BOE through our collaboration locally, we have been in communication with the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education, which has a current strategic focus on open ed. The statewide OER Advisory Council Work Group, co-chaired by my colleague Marilyn Billings, the head of scholarly communication, and Susan Tajan, coordinator of instructional technology at Northern Essex Community College, led a team of 21 individuals from the University of Massachusetts system, state universities, and community colleges to study and make recommendations to address the growing legislative interest in lowering the cost of educational resources, the issues of achieving equity for underserved, low-income, and first-generation students, and the enhancement of instructional effectiveness. A highlight from the full report, which is linked at the end of this presentation, is an overview of what the most significant deterrent to faculty adoption of OER are at the institutions surveyed across the state. The categories of these results, including technology support needs and the highest category, too hard to find what I need, are in alignment with our experiences in collaboratively supporting the OEI program. It takes multiple support efforts to integrate open, and the highest level of support staff time spent on our end was on the content selection by library staff. So in understanding the interest in OER on the campus and the state levels, and some of those deterrents, we have now connected with the Student Advisory Council in the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education, a group that has heavily influenced the work of the OER Advisory Council at the state level, helping to guide the formation of the report on the state of OER in Massachusetts. In addition to looking at our library student peer leaders, the SGA and MassPIRG members, we have now connected with this Student Advisory Council with the intent for adoption of the content created in the BOE collaboration. While the current meeting structure of this group has been impacted by semester shifts due to the pandemic, We are bringing the Bowie program to a late September discussion in the interest of helping students develop self-advocacy skills for their educational access at the state level. Another layer in our OER strategy is, of course, campus administration, which has been a part of the OEI program discussions all throughout the process. The initial financial support from our provost was essential in piloting the program, and all of the data I shared earlier in the presentation is regularly provided in articulating the continued success of the program. As we move forward with promoting OER on campus, we keep our university strategic goals in the forefront, one of which I've highlighted here from our 2018-2023 strategic plan, with a continued focus on student success and providing pertinent data on precisely how much we are impacting access to education. We can strongly advocate for strategic program growth with our administration. Our graduate student population, the final layer in the OER strategy sandwich, play a key role in supporting undergraduate education, and we continue to make inroads with this group as well. As opposed to the individual instructor support with the OEI program, we have been working with programs that touch all incoming undergraduate students, such as the writing program. The unique opportunity here is that all of our English 111 and 112 courses in writing, which all undergraduate students are required to take, are taught by graduate students who move through a specialized training program. The libraries have long collaborated on training these graduate instructors to ensure that the digital and information literacies are integrated into the curriculum. Currently, I'm working with the new program director to replace the student anthology text, currently a commercial textbook, which is used for all courses, with an open alternative. As large groups of graduate students learn to teach with and create open content, they will then be preparing themselves for publishing openly as they move through their own research. So, when I started this presentation, I gave you a sandwich with the promise to focus predominantly on our OEI faculty incentive program, which I did. And now I'm bringing you back to that sandwich as a reminder of who is really leading the conversation on OER adoption strategy on our campus. It is the undergraduate students. We've created a student-focused conversation in the adoption of OER, and it is clear that it is time to have students take that lead and advocate with their faculty and peers on a much larger scale. I've included some resources for further reading, which will be included in the presentation that is getting distributed after today's talk. And now I wanted to thank you so much for your time and attention, and I open the virtual floor for questions and conversation.
Well, firstly, let me take the opportunity to say thank you to Sarah. That was absolutely just mind-blowing, to be honest. As we start with our efforts here at Mandela Uni and try to sort of infuse into the academic project, we've seen our own sort of challenges emerging, not least of which is just that everything at our institution and really nationally is hidden away behind a paywall, which requires registration, which requires actual membership to an institution of higher learning. So it's amazing to see what you've done and the projects that you're leading. Can we maybe engage with a couple of questions? I see Mlungisi has a question, and Mlungisi is one of our open influencers here at Mandela Uni. So Mlungisi, would you like to switch your camera on and unmute yourself? I'll just mute myself.
Okay. Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Thank you
good afternoon.
presentation. I'm just interested to know what was the most successful amongst those efforts you mentioned at infusing OER into your academic project at UMass? You can just tell us more about that. Thank you.
Well, there have been so many. I mean, there are projects that impact very large numbers of students, and that's very meaningful to me. And so, looking at replacing the student anthology textbook with an open alternative, which will impact thousands of undergraduate students and hundreds of graduate students, that could be considered a big success. One of the projects that I have been very personally involved in is the one I want to share, which is going beyond textbooks. One of the areas that I personally specialize in is in supporting shifts to an open pedagogical model for classes. And by that, it's using student artifacts, student assignments as learning objects for subsequent classes. And I have collaborated with a couple of colleagues in the libraries and in a political science course to help shape a syllabus to support the creation of student podcasts, a podcast series that focuses on essentially end of the world scenarios. And this was before the pandemic hit. I want to clarify that. This, rather than having students, go through traditional textbooks and, write a paper about it and, have like a thesis that was due at the end of the semester, they instead were assigned to engage with some of our digital collections in the libraries, some primary resources and historical content, and then got together in groups and produced these really amazing, very high quality podcasts. And they were taught all throughout their seminar about Creative Commons licensing, how to publish openly, how our institutional repository works. And we created a student journal in our institutional repository to host the content from this pilot class that is now sustained. So this is a content, researched and created and shared by students that is now turned into a publication that is hosted openly and shared openly. And it's wildly engaging. Like, these are really compelling stories that students are narrating that have historical context, political context. I think it's fantastic. And sorry, I talk a little bit at length about that one because it really is what I consider one of the most successful.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks, Mlungisi. I see that one of our other Open Ed influencers here at Mandela Uni, Kelly Liberty, has entered a comment into a question in the chat window. I'll read it out. So Kelly says that at our university, so many educators have textbooks they wrote themselves, set as required readings. So there's a financial challenge. And in our advocacy efforts here, do you have any suggestions perhaps about how to approach such instances?
Yeah, that falls into that tough category that of compelling faculty when you're talking about their own scholarship. And that is something that we have been discussing with our instructors for years. And it really, I guess where that conversation lives, and it having lived within the libraries, has had a great impact on helping to move faculty in the direction of sharing their own scholarship openly. And that's for many different reasons. In libraries, in university libraries, I mean, you have, a group of folks who have a very deep understanding of licensing, the publishing industry, the cost of a lot of the materials that, they're subscribing to, and many libraries can't afford the content anymore. And so, you can have these conversations with faculty about, well, the promotion and tenure process or your department might be advocating for you to publish in this journal, but do you realize that we can't even afford to subscribe to it? So that's one part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation is really educating faculty on open licensing and how to maintain ownership of their own scholarship, because a lot of faculty don't realize that when they publish with some of these commercial textbook aid companies, they're giving away their rights. And that is going to impact how they use their own scholarship in the future, which is incredibly unfair to them as content creators. And so that really helps to set the stage of understanding, how commercial publishing works and the industry works, and how open licensing works for individual scholarship. And then also having, that we have the Open Education Initiative as an example for, showcase projects or other faculty champions. But that isn't another essential part of it too, is that if you can find one faculty member who is willing to take a step in the direction of OER, and even better, they've published their own textbook that they then shift into the open licensing realm, use that as a case example to compel other faculty to make that switch.
I love that answer. And I think it ties in beautifully to what's about to happen in the remaining sort of segments of this series. We've got the team from Digital Open Textbooks for Development from UCT, who will be presenting in the second last week. I think it's the 21st of October. And Digital Open Textbooks for Development is also something where almost like your OEI initiative, because they've got funding to sort of help the adoption, but also the creation of open textbooks there at UCT amongst faculty. They've also been giving small grants like to staff to motivate them to be engaging with open, to be exploring with open. So it's been quite a meaningful and impactful project that's happening there. And we'll definitely be profiling some of what's been coming out and what's to come out of that project ahead in this series. Again, that's like the 21st of October. Forgive me for taking the time to do some marketing as well, Sarah. I'm looking and I'm trying to see if there are any more questions, and it doesn't seem like that. Sarah, do you perhaps have any final words that you'd like to enter into the conversation before I do a wrap up?
I guess just, and Gino, Manglesi and Kelly know this full well already. But there has just been such a shift in our work, just overall in education and in open ed, given everything that's happened since the beginning of the calendar year and since the shutdown due to the pandemic. I'm very thankful that we've had this focus on open educational resources for the amount of time that we have at the institution, because in response to access to a lot of content given COVID-19, there has been this accelerated push to engage our students and all of our learners in openly accessible content. And one of the things that, just to further, vilify commercial publishers, it has been really bizarre and interesting to see how many publishers like Elsevier will use an example, one of our favorites, highest cost, natural sciences, and also Springer Nature. Like, these are some of those like gatekeeping titles that faculty are up against when they're looking to progress in their careers. Like, they need to publish in these titles, but these publishers have some of the highest costs. And following the initial shutdown and campuses closing and online access, becoming much more prominent, and also university budgets and library budgets getting squeezed and really stripped down, some of these bigger publishers were saying, oh, we're going to provide free access to many of our collections to help ease that burden during the pandemic, to help, ensure affordability, like all of this stuff that we talk about here in the context of, we're trying to legitimately provide a better educational experience for our students. And these publishers are making these statements, providing open content for 3 to 4 to 5 maybe months, and then taking it all away, like right as the fall semester is starting. We haven't changed. The situation hasn't changed for many campuses, and budgets are getting more and more compressed as universities are experiencing different financial crises. And I just want to point out that these publishers, again, having mentioned the FOIAR, are jumping on the bandwagon of, wanting to make it look like they're trying to engage us in these conversations about student engagement, but they are false. They are, these capitalist organizations that are looking to make money off of scholarship, off of faculty scholarship and of student scholarship. So I guess that would be my closing comment. Go open.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's now 4 minutes to 8 a.m. your time. So I know that you've got some family duties and then some work and all of these things. So we so much appreciate you taking the time, firstly, to be here, to be our collaborator, and all the hard work you've been doing on creating BOE. And then all the effort you've put into this presentation. You're at Mandela Uni, and I'm sure that because we have some colleagues from other universities in South Africa in attendance as well, and then the fact that this will be available as a resource for sharing afterwards. Lots and lots of people will be learning from this, and I hope taking to heart some of what you've said. Before we leave, I'd like to just say that next week, our week 5 session is again set for Wednesday at the same time, so 1 p.m. SA time, and will feature Prof. Jaco Olivier, who is a UNESCO Chair in Open Education Resources and Multimodal Learning. Prof. Olivier is attending here today. It's lovely to have him here every week, and he's from, as I said, the Northwest University. The title of his presentation is Localizing Open Educational Resources, Promoting Multilingualism Through Open Education. We are excited and thrilled that people are tuning in and supporting our Influencing with Open Education series here at Mandela Uni, and hope that everybody stays safe, and wish you a fun farewell for now. Thanks, everybody, and bye.
Bye. Thank you.